So, okay, the last panel of the morning is, of course, I think all the banks spoke a bit about your business this morning because, in fact, everybody says that when we speak of data, it's much easier to go and say to my manager that we need it for fraud management, we need it for regulation. So everybody is thinking about fraud, KYC, know your customer onboarding, and so on. So this morning, for this last panel, I asked three people working in that very field to discuss with us about what they can really do today with the data, what is the future with that, what traction we see. So we have 30 minutes. Maximum, otherwise it will be not even a lunch. Let's try to make it in 25. Everybody will present yourself first, one by one, and after I have my questions.
Hello everyone, Thibaut Ravizet, head and founder of QuickSign. QuickSign is a digital onboarding platform dedicated to the financial services, B2C, trying to work all over Europe.
Okay, so I'm Karine Carto. I'm working for LexisNexis Risk Solutions. Just a quick explanation because you can see some different logo. It's not very clear. LexisNexis Risk Solutions is working in the data area. Data is part of the DNA, and more on the data based on the physical identity. And they bought 2 years ago a company called ThreatMetrix, the other logo, which is specialized in the digital identity. So all the data based on the digital identity. So now the ThreatMetrix name, it's the name of the product.
Chris?
Thank you. Chris Thomas. I'm the managing director for a business called Emailage. We're founded by Brazilians, which is quite unusual for this part of the world, headquartered out of Phoenix, Arizona. There's a big, heavy American Express connection, as you can probably imagine, with that location. Been with them 18 months now. My background is Experian, Equifax, iovation, obviously a great friend of ThreatMetrix. So I've been working in data a long time. Thank you for letting me talk in English, otherwise I'd be sat up there still. And please don't ask me about Brexit. Please.
Thibaut, we know each other for a long time, and I wonder what have changed. When did you launch QuickSign? Like 10 years?
Let's say 10 years for the industrial volumes. The ID 2005 or 6.
Yeah, beginning to be
pilots between 2005 and 2010.
With my other company, Altair Consulting, I've seen you in many French banks and insurance. It was step by step for the last 10 years, roughly. Is it already old news, the onboarding with data and so on, or it's still just only the beginning and you were perhaps a bit in advance?
Well, in 2005, we were in advance, for sure. Then I would say old news. This is a transforming profession, so I wouldn't say old news, but for digital banks, for instance, this is quite old news. This is a day-to-day work. We're working with them deeply. For other form of banks, I would say maybe that this is something new, still new.
What is still the problem? I mean, we all tried, at least, even if we don't use, we all tried these new banks where everything is digital. And when sometime you just come back to a normal situation, classical bank or insurance, and they ask you for so long process, even if many optimized a lot. But what is still today in 2020 almost the problem to make it happen much faster with your solutions or competitors one?
Well, just for an explanation, the 3 main parts of what we call digital onboarding, it's running a KYC, obtaining a legally binding signature on the contract. We are in Europe, so the signature has a value. And checking information and verify what the customer declared in its application form. That's what we call the pit of the iceberg. Everyone knows that, and any banks in the place has already tried or deployed service regarding KYC signature or checking info validity information. However, there is the hidden part of the iceberg, and this hidden part, very few manage to have it run properly and efficiently. The hidden parts, the feature behind these hidden parts are workflow management, because a sales context, a product, a financial product is totally different from one client to another. Exception management, because when you sell a financial product, almost one onboarding file out of 2 needs loops, communication exchanges between the front, the customer or the sales rep, and the back, the banks. And those loops are very costly, very expensive, and you need to monitor them. We need to collect the traces. Of course, we try to have fraud detection systems, and now more and more instant decision scores to automate it and to automate the decision. And all that stuff is very complicated to orchestrate, to articulate. It relies on data, for sure, which is the main part of the hidden part of the iceberg. And very few banks manage to have this overall look at this onboarding.
Last question about it. You said data is at the base of all this system. Between 2005, when you got the ID, and today, I imagine the technology you used have changed quite a bit. Where did you see the biggest improvement for your day-to-day job to manage this digital onboarding for your customers, if any?
No, there is probably all these open banking and API system, overall system. That we are an aggregator of data, and we collect the data from our client, the banks. They send us the data of their customer. We collect the information from the customer, their justification document, their salary slip. We can access now to their banking account if they allow us. And all that stuff is far more easier when you get API standard access to the ecosystem.
Thank you. Karine, how data does help today to improve fraud management and risk management?
How does it help?
Yeah.
Yes, it's key, of course. It's key for the revenue. It's key for the image, the reputation. And what is important is to detect fraud, of course, but also, and this is what we try to do for our customer in any digital business, it's to help them to recognize their legitimate customers. Because we talk about the customer journey, we say we don't talk enough about the consumer itself, and we see it's really a nightmare to manage different passwords. To sometimes on a certain website we use very regularly, and we have some step-up authentication, etc. So we really help our own customers, so financial services and e-commerce players, to be able to recognize legitimate customer and to help them to provide a red carpet approach, I would say. So this is one point.
To do that, you need to analyze, I imagine, a lot of amount of data from me as a user.
Yes, exactly. But so what we do, we no longer we collect some data from our customer, but we create our own data. So based on what we see from an internet user, we are going to detect a lot of different information about this technical environment. Our customer, which is the bank, can send us additional information, a name, an email, etc., etc. And based on that, we are going to create our own data. What is data? In fact, it is based on what we call the digital identity network. So this is a very specific and unique approach. The digital identity network is composed with all the transactions we score for all our customers in the world. So typically, the type of data we are going to provide to our customers, it will be this device. We saw this device on the, 6 different websites, 3 different locations. It's associated with 20, so if it's 20, it's a lot better, 20 email addresses or 2 email addresses. We know the preferred shipping address, etc.
So you have all the information. Okay, let's make it very concrete. This is my twin. I never leave him. I think I see this guy much more than my kids. So you know everything about this one, is that? If I go in many websites, who are your customers?
We will recognize you because we know your smartphone.
At least you know him. You don't know if it's me, but you know him.
We know your smartphone. We know your preferred we know your geolocation, and we will have some. We can do some I don't want to go into really technical details, but and on top of that, your website. So I don't know if you buy something on Cdiscount or if you are a customer of a French bank, will send us additional information. The email address. This is not something we can collect automatically for privacy concern. And based on that, we already saw you, Laurent, on TripAdvisor, on Airbnb, at Crédit Mutuel, at Cdiscount, at Air France, Rue du Commerce.
So, but that is LexisNexis, which is behind the different website. What is the limit? How am I protected if I don't want you to know all of that about me? If I'm freaking out.
We don't really know a lot of...
You know a lot about him, it's the same.
First, we protect you. This is the topic of this session. In fact, the only person who can identify you, it's a customer that provides information, so your bank or the mentions. So you're something you are okay with because you are selling stuff from them, so that's okay. So the information we are going to provide back is how many devices we know associated to these devices, how different email address, etc., etc. This is not confidential information. Do you really mind that we know that through the digital identity network you have 2 computers, 1 smartphone, and 3 different email addresses?
No, I agree with the question one by one. I think the point I want to go, and I will ask exactly the same question to you, in fact, is where do you think the consumer, we were speaking of that in the panel before, sorry, it was in French, but where the citizens agree to go to have some services at a certain extent, where what kind of data and what kind of service I accept you to do to be more protected. To be protected, you need some time perhaps to be intrusive. So do you have this kind of question on in your business, in the different geographies you operate? The limits of what you can do to protect?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because we're all consumers. We may work inside data, but we're all consumers. So ThreatMetrix know everything about me. My company knows everything about me. Experian know everything about me. And I come from a country, of course, with much more relaxed data laws than France. I came up through the world of credit bureau, which I know in France is a complete no-go, or it used to be certainly. I think there's an acceptance as a consumer that it's what your data's being used for that's critical. That's the critical piece. I don't mind my data being used to protect my financial assets. My data being used to protect my identity. I know, again, we live in this world where we understand the sheer pain identity fraud could cause us as individuals. And I think it's a lot of this is to do with education to the consumer. Again, we're in a privileged position. We understand data. We understand what it's used for. If it's up to the banks, to e-commerce sites, to anybody who services the consumer to make it very clear why data is being collected and what it's used for. Where the nervousness comes in is when Facebook and Google and people like that start collecting our data and repackaging and using it to sell. And I think that's the problem I've certainly seen with GDPR, and I'm sure you've seen the same, a lot of concerns from the client side around the use of data. When I've certainly heard the language legitimate purpose used today. It's all about legitimate purpose, but really making the consumer understand this is why the use of your data is important. But it's an ongoing battle. It will never be an easy thing to do. You want your data, you're worried about your data being controlled by external agencies. So it's up to those external agencies to be very clear why they use it and be whiter than white. Do not regurgitate it for purposes.
Staying with you, Chris, you provide your services in several countries, many geographies. Do you see difference in scale or paces of adoption of this kind of services you provide? It's the same question for you, Karen, by the way.
Well, it depends, obviously, on the online environment. We are a fraud agency. We're a fraud prevention agency, as are ThreatMetrix, as I'm guessing you have a very similar sort of play. Again, it's legitimate purpose. Fraud is generally linked to online. Fraud existed before the online world, but certainly not in anything like the scale it does today. So you may see emerging economies, so, you know, some of the African countries where they never had broadband infrastructure. It's 4G, 5G that are enabling the online economy. Of course, they have their own completely different set of fraud risks. But generally, I've certainly seen what I consider to be true globalization over these last few years, where most economies now are moving towards an online environment. We're starting to see interpretations of GDPR popping up around the world as well. We've seen that in Brazil. We're seeing it in California, which is causing the Americans an awful lot of pain, thankfully. I feel it's time to get our revenge for them being so data lax for so many years. But no, to answer your question, adoption is just increasing everywhere as online increases.
It's just following the digitalization.
Absolutely. Digitalization anywhere leads
same view,
to...
Karen?
Oh, yes. Now, in any country, people are using a lot of digital channels. And we really have a global. We want to have a global view on this. There is a kind of a community approach in the way we work, because this is like this that Fraudster operates, by the way. They process transaction, they make money transit from country to another country, and this is thanks to our digital network, which is global, that we can completely understand the fraud patterns, making mule detection and things like this.
What is for you, the question is for all of you, what is for you the next frontier in your domain, which is protecting your customers and also at the end customer, in fact, with fraud and onboarding? What is the next frontier with data? What can we do more than you do already today? What could you expect with AI, with whatever? Perhaps, Thibaut.
I'm sorry first. Well, my wish first. In our company, we need to distinguish very clearly the production environment for our customer, where we have to deliver all information and mainly personal data information related to the GDPR obligation. And then we want to value the data, so we need to wipe out all the personal data and build another infrastructure where we can play and have our data people play on it. My first wish would be to simplify that. If we had the possibility to automate the way to erase any trace of personal data from our production environment, and I would say that can apply to any system. Okay, I don't need so much this data. The personal data in our context has no full value, an enormous value. No, maybe it's 5% of the value of the data we collect. So if I can just wipe out this, let it to my customer, so they can run their KYC, but afterwards, if you can automate that and be sure to protect the people and be sure to value the data and value our business.
And what will you do with all this 95% of anonymized data? What is your wish? I mean, as a CEO of this company, you must have a direction for that. I mean, it's just to try to see if you find a business model, or you already have in mind something that you could leverage?
Let me tell you the business model. Maybe a bank, a direct bank or a consumer credit company, you will pay between 200 and 300 euros a customer. And in that, digital onboarding weigh about almost one half of this cost. There is a marketing side, of course, but afterwards, if you don't convert properly your mass of prospect into customer, you lose money, and that's the marketing part costs about 100 euro for our customer clients, and then all the automatization, the human resources cost about 20 to 30 euros. And the fraud, it costs only 5 euro. Obviously, for fraud, I need probably personal data analysis. But for the marketing transformation, I don't need it at all. And that's where we are at, and that's where we're working.
To focus more on the good time.
On the efficiency of the whole overall transformation. When you open an account, the customer needs to be convinced of the value proposition of the bank, the card, the services, but then you say, okay, you need to prove your identity, you need to prove your financial capacities, all that stuff. You lose a lot of customer, and our business is.
And you think that with the use of this 95% anonymized data, you can leverage that? You can be much better.
Big time.
So that's the next step for you. Same question for you. What do you think will be next with data usage in your different model? You have already a lot of things. I mean, I know your solution is very famous and they work quite well, but is it something new in the pipeline with the usage of data?
I start? Okay. So what we do for banks today on the digital identity part, banks are using us to better understand the customer journey and to better detect legitimate customer and fraudster. So typically they use our service for scoring at the enrollment, if it's possible to have a digital enrollment. They use us for the logging to make sure it's not an account takeover. They can use it for the creation of new beneficiaries, for wire transfer, etc. So we think that there are a lot of players in the fraud prevention area. And we think the great winner would be the one who can completely merge the check of the digital identity, the physical identity, and provide the KYC solution from A to Z to the bank. So you see your customer who wants to enroll, you do a risk score, you check the VID documents, etc., etc. A kind of player who can orchestrate everything from A to Z. And this is what we are working on. But it's not so simple with GDPR and all this stuff.
Same question to finish the panel, Chris.
Yeah.
Next frontier for you.
So from a company level, we're certainly working on building out the data asset. More data makes better decisions. I think we all agree with that. But I think from a market perspective, we're seeing more collaboration. We collaborate with ThreatMetrix. You know, we have disparate data assets, but again, if you follow the path of more data makes better decisions, by bringing them together and collaborating better, actually we're enabling our customer bases to make those better decisions, which obviously help everybody. And I think to the other point, there's a lot of untapped data out there. You know, you think about the data people like Visa have, people like MasterCard, enormous data assets, phenomenally big. I know there's work going on within lots of the very, very big data organizations to how do we take that data and utilize it and turn it into intelligence. So, you know, I've been on the board of an organization called the MRC for a long time. It's the Merchant Risk Council. And this is one of the discussions we have on a regular basis. How do, you know, open banking's a start. That's given the first time you to have the ability to tap into all of my financial accounts to get a better sense of my financial behavior. When you look at the big data assets out there, if we can get to the point where you can start to tap into those data universes in a single way to make decisions, I'm quite a passionate fraud fighter. I've seen fraud and the damage it can do, and the money it takes out of our economies is phenomenal. So I think anything that can encourage an ecosystem to make it hard for the organised criminals to continue ripping billions out of our economy is a good thing. So, you know, I think that certainly from a company level, it's about building out the data assets. From a market level, it's about bringing them together more in a way where, as you say, you can tap into them easily. No one bank can have 120 APIs. It's unmanageable. We need those layers in place to say we can really real-time tap into these huge dynamic databases to make accurate decisions, which is what we should be doing.
Thank you very much. You can applaud the panel.